Hello all, welcome back to Tosca Scenario Handling Series Part 3 by Technology Training Experts. In this video, we'll be talking about Excel handling for the framework point of view, and this is an extension to the previous video, that is Part 2 on Excel handling. If you have not watched that video, the link will be added in the description. Kindly do watch it, and also kindly subscribe to the channel to get more videos on Tosca. Previous video we have seen of how to read the data from the Excel sheet using a row and a column, and then how do we write the data into the Excel sheet. So now technically you know how do we handle the Excel sheets. So now let us apply this into a scenario. So previously the scenario is that okay, now marks of this Rahul student is 72. So if the marks is greater than 50, we understood that the candidate is pass, the student is pass here. So exam status should be pass. So we have seen how to read this information and how to write this information, but we are not handling this process evaluation from our test case. Now let us take a simple requirement here of read this first record. Okay, for the first record, get the marks of this student, evaluate the marks. If it is greater than 50, greater than or equal to 50, the candidate is pass. If it is less than 50, then the candidate is fail. So based upon the evaluation, come back here and update the exam status as pass or fail. That is our requirement. So let us update the fourth requirement as read, process and write data into Excel for a single row. We still are looking for only single row. Okay, for a single row, it can be first row, second row, or third row. Let's, for an easy purpose, let's look for a first row. Then the extension we will see, the next requirement here we will see is for the multiple rows. Okay, so what is that I want to do here? I want to read this information, that is 72, and I want to evaluate it, and then I want to check whether the student is pass or fail, and then write it here as pass or fail. Let us go back to the test case. I'm going to utilize this test case. So copy this Excel read from the test case and paste it here, and I'm going to modify this. Okay, first of all, give a good meaningful name, Excel read, and also I want to say process and also write, read, process and write data into Excel for single row, for first row to be specific. Okay, first row. So for this, the open Excel workbook will be exactly same. We do not have any difference here. It is exactly the same. We are giving the information about this path here and also giving a name here, but I want to read and also write. So I don't want to say read only as true. So let me delete this. Okay, select that row and delete the information. So delete it. So we are opening this Excel sheet and come back here, and it is still class 10 sheet, and this is the information. I don't have to change anything here. So go back to this Excel range manipulation. Now this is the place for the first row. I don't want to buffer anything. Okay, I don't want to verify student information or name. All I want to do is about this marks. Okay, so but I don't want to read, I just only read. I want to read, process and write. So let me create a folder here. Okay, so it's not a necessary part to create a folder, but make a habit of this, because this is where your logic goes. So process folder will be created and will be kept after this Excel range manipulation. Okay, so Excel range manipulation is done, and now first thing what we do is we have to read the information, Excel range manipulation, and we say that is read data. So what is the data that we want to read for the first row? Because our requirement is it's the first row. For the first row, so which means $1, go to the student marks. It's not verification. I'm going to say it as buffer, because I don't want to verify anything here. I want to buffer it. So give a good buffer and name here. So what I generally do is like I'll take this exact name here and we put it over here and say underscore buffer. See, we have so many parameters. We have TCP parameters, we have business parameters, we have buffers, we have TCD parameters, we have TDS parameters. So at the end of the day, you'll get confused once you create your project. So make a good habit of giving an underscore or suffix here, so that by looking at it itself you'll understand, okay, this is a buffer, this is a TCP, this is a business parameter. Okay, so student marks of buffer. So we go, so this is the reading. So you read the information and you store it here. Now I want to evaluate it. How do we evaluate it? So there is something called expression evaluation, but before that I want to put an if condition. Why do you want to put an if condition? Because there is a path change here. If the candidate is having the student marks as greater than 50, then it is pass, he or she is pass. If the candidate did not get 50 marks, then he or she will be failed. So there is a division of path. So we have to put if condition. Now here there is only then here. So let me right click on this if condition. I want to have an else statement also. So this is the complete if condition. Okay, so inside this process I have put an if condition. Now here I am gonna say like verify if the student marks student is pass or fail. This is the place where we verify. Okay, so first thing is condition. So in the condition you want to verify the marks. How do you verify something? So expression evaluation, you go to the standard modules. This is one of the interview questions that you will get. So expression evaluation, why do we use expression evaluation? We use expression evaluation tool, T-box evaluation tool, to validate an expression. It can be using a numbers, it can be using buffers, it can be using anything, but you want to validate something, you can validate using this T-box evaluation tool. So let me drag that and drop it here, dropped it, and then here is the place where we have to evaluate. So this is the student marks buffer, right? So copy this and come here and say flower bracket b of, this is the student marks buffer. Okay, now say if the student marks buffer is greater than or equal to 50. If the candidate has, so we have got the first record information, student marks, and we have stored it inside this buffer. Now we are evaluating this. If the marks are greater than 50, then I go to this then part, the same write information. Now this is read Excel range manipulation, right? So we go to the write Excel range manipulation, the same Excel range manipulation. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it in the then. You can build it all together from first. Definitely, but easy procedure. So Excel range manipulation, this is not read data, this is write, it's not, maybe I'll give it as write pass. So if the candidate has got more than 50, greater than or equal to 50 marks, then I go to the same range, same first row. This time it is not student marks. Let us go to this Excel sheet, copy this exam status, come back here and give this exam status here as a column value, and say it's not buffer because we are writing something. So it is input here it has pass. So if the student has got greater than 50, go to the same $1 first, which means first row exam status column, and make the value as pass. So let's go to the else part. So exactly same step I'm going to copy and go to the else, and I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to say write fail. If the student marks is not greater than 50, then write fail. Go to the same range, same first row, same exam status, it should be fail. F-A-I-L, fail. Okay, so this is how we evaluate. This is what is the process. So we read the data, we evaluate the data, which is nothing but process, and then we write the information into this. For how many rows? For a single row, it is all about the first row, $1. Okay, so minimize this. So this is what is the if condition, if then and else, and finally we come to the close. Obviously we have to save it because we are writing some information back into this Excel sheet. So save true, and I don't want to give anything as save path or save as type because I want to save it in the same Excel sheet in the same path, so I don't have to mention anything. So simply save it. So this is how we evaluate, we read, process and write into a same Excel sheet. Okay, for a single row, for the first row. Now let me run this and let me show you. When I run this, what am I expecting is this here the first value is 72, which is greater than 50. So here it should be pass. So I don't have to tell the tool whether it is pass or fail. The tool itself decides whether it is pass or fail. So right click on this, run in Scratchbook. Make sure you are not opening that Excel sheet when it is running, because it cannot access it. The tool cannot access. So you see test case is pass here. So let me go inside this and expand this. So at first you are reading this information, right? This is the read information. Read the data from the Excel sheet. Read data. So expand this. You've got the buffer. Student marks buffer has been set to value 72. Okay. Now you are going to the if condition. You are verifying if the student is pass or fail. Expression evaluation tool. 72 is greater than or equal to 50. To true. Evaluated to true. So now as it is true, it is going to the then statement. And you are going back to the first row and you are writing the data as pass. And finally you are saving it. Let me open this Excel sheet and show you whether it is actually updating it or not. So I'm opening this. For the first record, it is updating the value as pass. So this is how we handle both reading the data, processing, and also writing the data into the Excel sheet. See, processing as of now, this is a simple requirement. So we are saying a simple if condition itself will do the trick for us. But a processing folder, this process folder can be very big. In the real-time scenario, you can open the Excel sheet, read the data. In the process, you can open the URL, you can do some sequence of steps inside this, and finally take the data and go back to the Excel sheet and update the whether your requirement is completed or not, whether it is successful or not. You can evaluate and you can paste it here. So the process folder can be as big as anything. So this is how we handle it. If I ask you, do the same thing for the second row. So what you have to do, you have to come to the process, change it to $2, go to this here and go to then and else, change it to $2 and execute it. It will work for the second row. If I say for third row, again you have to come here, you have to update it to 3, 3, 3, it will work. So if I say I have 100 students, will you have to come to, for each and every student, will you have to come here and say, okay, 21, 22, 23, every time you have to change it? See, that's manual effort, right? So the simple understanding is, any test case you take any test case, it should not have manual input when you are creating an automation test case. Okay, it should take everything on its own. It should run everything on its own. Even if you have 30 students here or 40 students here or maybe 55 students here, it should pick up on its own and it should run for everything. There should not be manual input. So that is where the fifth requirement I want to explain you. This is the place. This is what we use in our actual projects. This is the framework scenario. We read, process, and write data into Excel for multiple rows that can run on its own. So I don't have to change the numbers or the row numbers 1, 2, 3. No, it should pick up for multiple rows. It should pick up the data, read it, process it, and write it. Go to the second row, read it, process it, write it. Go to the third row, read it, process and write it. That's how our framework should be built. Okay, now we'll see that. How do we do that? Go back here. Let me take a backup of this test case again, because most of it will be similar. So copy and paste it. So now let me rename this. It's Excel read, process, write data into Excel for multiple rows. That's the requirement, for multiple rows. Okay, so for this also, the open Excel will be exactly same. You are giving the path here and you are giving the workbook name, and in the define Excel range you are specifying which sheet you want to talk to and what is the data range that you are having. So everything is same, and finally close workbook also will be same. This is the reason why I asked you to put this process folder, because the complete change will be only inside this process folder. Okay, so now what do we do is, so previously if I ask you to handle only first row, you have kept it as $1. If I ask you to handle second row, $2. So $1, $2, $3. So this number 1 2 3 4 5 6, right, this is what I want to handle it. Now as I want to handle multiple records, I don't want to give any specific number here. So instead of giving this is the logic, okay, instead of giving a specific number as $1 2 and 3 here, right, I want to define a buffer called counter. Observe this will be interesting. So it's tbox set buffer, drag it and drop it here. So I will put this tbox set buffer before this process, and I want to define something called counter. I want to define a buffer called counter, okay, buffer variable, and I want to assign it as value 1 at first. Okay, so maybe I'll give the name of this test step as tbox set buffer set counter. You are setting the value, you are creating the counter and also setting the value of that counter. So set counter. So counter value has been 1. So now let's go back. So process. So when I want to say $1 instead of specifying it as $1, so what is 1? 1 implies it is counter, right? So I'll simply specify here, very important step. This is the key of the framework. Okay, so instead of specifying it as here, for reading the data, I want to read the first record as of now, right? So for reading the $1 information, what is 1? 1 implies counter here, right? So instead of 1, I'm going to specify here $ flower bracket b of counter. So I'll give the buffer counter here. So what is that I'm saying? So read this information from this Excel sheet. It come here, it says $ of buffer of counter. What is buffer of counter value? It is 1 as of now. So which means during execution this will be converted to $1. Now the tool understands, okay, read the first record information and store it inside this buffer. That is how it works. It works perfectly, right? So then I'll go inside this if condition, and evaluation is same. There's no change in this evaluation. Okay, and then I'll come to the then, and inside this then I want to say write pass, but where I want to write pass, is it $1? No, again, instead of saying a specific number here, I'll say flower bracket b of counter. Similarly, go to the else, write fail. Instead of specifying it as $1, instead of 1, so specify it as flower bracket b of counter. So this works very much fine for the first row, but our requirements, because if I run this, right, it will work very much fine for the first row. The first row will be updated. Okay, let me delete this pass here. The first row will be done, but what about the second row? So now counter value need to be incremented, and this same procedure need to be repeated multiple times. See, when you want to repeat is one or multiple steps multiple times, okay, the same sequence of steps multiple times, you put a loop. I'm repeating again. When you want to execute one or couple of steps multiple times, then you put that particular steps or group of steps into a loop. So here the process where read the data, evaluate it and write it, I want to repeat this process multiple times because I have multiple rows. So I put this process folder into a loop. So what are the different loops that are available in our Tosca? We have while loop and do while loop. Okay, so I'm going to use a while loop, a simple while loop. So right click on this test case at the top, and you see beside this if condition there is something called do while, but let me go for the while loop. I am a big fan of while loop. So while loop, what is this while loop importance? I want to say like repeat the process for multiple rows. That's the reason I want to put this while loop. Okay, so put this before this process. Okay, be mindful, put this before the process. Now what is that is present inside this while loop? It has condition and loop. So what is the condition? What is the condition here? So execute that process for all the number of rows, first row, second row and third row. So here how many rows are there? 3 rows are there. first row, second row and third row. So I want to tell to this while loop, execute this loop. What is there inside this loop? This process is there inside this loop. You see, I'm dragging the process and I'm posting it in this loop. So this process folder need to be looped multiple times. Okay, but based upon what condition? The condition is run it for 3 times, because we have 3 rows of data here. So how do I tell this while loop run it for 3 times? We have a counter here. So now for the condition, I'll put an expression evaluation again. So drag this and go to this while test cases and drop it on this counter. Now say to this condition that this counter value is there, right? So tell this while loop expression evaluation condition that flower bracket be of counter. Check if this counter is less than or equal to 3. Why 3? Sorry, less than or equal to 3. Why 3? Because we have 3 number of rows of data. First row, second row and third row. 3 rows of data. So counter value of 3, counter value is less than or equal to 3. So we are telling the tool, verify if the counter value is less than or equal to 3. If it is less than or equal to 3, then go inside the loop and execute this process. So what is the counter value at first? Now when I execute this test case, now what happens is it will open the Excel sheet, it will define the range, it will set the counter to 1. So it will come to the while loop, it will evaluate this. What is the value of counter? 1. So 1 is less than or equal to 3. Yes, the condition is satisfied. When the condition is satisfied, it will go inside the loop and it will execute. So this while loop will execute till this condition is satisfied. So for the first time, it will satisfy 1 is less than or equal to 3. You come to the process. You expand this T-box Excel range manipulation. Here you have got $1 because counter value is 1. So you read the data from the first row and you evaluate it. And if the value is greater than or equal to 50, it will become as pass. If it is not, if it will become as fail. So the first execution will be working fine. Perfect. Now the control will come back to this while loop. It will keep on the control will only be inside this while loop till this condition is fail. Now when it comes for the second time, what is the condition? The counter value, it is still 1, because we have not incremented or we have not increased this counter to 2, 3, 4. No, it is still 1. So it will be 1 is less than or equal to 2. Condition satisfied, it will go inside, it will do the same process for n number of times. So the first row only will be executed n number of times. But that is not my requirement. Our requirement is first time it should take the first row, second time it should take the second row, third time it should take the third row. But what is happening here? Only the first row is repeating a number of times. This loop is going to the infinite loop because the condition will never fail. Now, but if you ask me, there is an interview question here. What is the maximum number of times a while loop will be executed? So I'm clicking on this while loop, you see, and then going to the properties here. When I click on this properties, you will see a property called maximum repetition. Here you see, for the while loop, we have got maximum repetition here. Maximum repetition is 30. So which means the tool itself is giving you an option that if the while loop, any loop is going to the infinite loop, if the condition is never failing, it will execute for maximum of 30 times by default. You can change that number obviously, but that is default number. After 30 times, it will stop and say it will fail the test case. Say like, okay, maximum repetitions reached. I mean, there is something wrong with your test case. Just check it. That's the information. So what is the mistake that we are doing here is we are not incrementing the counter. So inside the loop, after executing our process, okay, I want to increment the loop. So how do I increment the loop? It is still the same. Again, this is also again one more interview question. So how do we increment in the loops? How do we increment? So we use math function. So I want this counter value to be incremented. Now it's not set counter, it's increment counter. I want to give good meaningful names for the steps. So for the same counter, I use math function. Flower bracket math. Come on. So flower bracket math of flower bracket b of counter plus 1 because I want to increment with one value. So I want to increment this counter value to 1. Increment, so already 1, it is the counter value is 1, it will be incremented plus 1. So the counter and the value output of this will be 2, and that will be assigned back to the counter. So now the counter value is becoming 2. So what happens is, here we are incrementing it. So during execution, now if you run it again, you are opening it, you are defining the range, and then you are setting the counter value to 1, and in the while loop you are checking the counter value 1 is less than or equal to 3. You come here in the process, you read the first record value, you verify the condition. If the condition is less than or equal greater than or equal to 50, it will be pass. Less than or equal less than 50, it will be fail. And then you come here and you increment the counter value will become 2. So when the second time it goes to the loop, while loop, now here counter value is 2. 2 is less than or equal to 3. Yes, it is still satisfying. It will go to the loop. It will be executing now in the process point of view dollar buffer of counter. What is the value of counter now? 2. So $2. It will start reading the second record, which is this record. It will get the value, process it, and whether it says pass or fail. Here it should say pass. Now again come down, increment. It will become 3 now. Go to the top to this while loop. Now 3 is less than or equal to 3. 3 equal to 3. True. Yes. Come again inside this loop. Execute for the third record. This is the third record. It will be executed. And then increment the counter. Now counter value will become 4. Come back. 4. 4 is less than or equal to 3. This is where the counter, this condition fails. 4 is less than or equal to 3 is false. That is when the tool understands, okay, while loop is broken. The loop is broken. Let me come out of this loop, and then it will go here and it will execute this. Okay, this is how we handle a loop. This is how we handle multiple data handling. Okay, so let me execute this and save this. Okay, I do not have anything in the exam status. Let me close this. I'll execute this. Right click on this, run in Scratchbook. So it may take couple more seconds because it's reading 3 times, 3 records. You see, it is pass. So but let me explain this. So first of all, the counter value has been set to 1. You see, counter value set to 1, and then how many repetitions are there? 4 repetitions, but 3 are successful and the 4th one is fail. Let me show you the first loop. You see a tick mark here, which means evaluated to true. You are going into the loop, you are reading the data and you are evaluating the data. This condition is true because the value is 72. 72 is greater than 50 marks. So you are going to the then, and you are updating the value as pass, and you are incrementing the counter value becomes 2. Now this is 2. Again this procedure continues. The last one, so repetition 4, you see condition is fail. You see a cross mark here. So 4 is less than or equal to 3, evaluated to false, just as I told you. Okay, so this is when the loop will be broken, will be coming out, and will save the data. Let me open this Excel sheet and show you what exactly is happening here. So you see pass and fail because then marks are less than 50. This is how it works. Your process folder can be very big, but reading multiple data, and how do we process multiple data? Your test case should be in such a way that this is the reusability concept. The same test case is being reused here for multiple sets of data. That's the whole concept here. That's the whole framework that we are talking about. You don't have to create, I don't have to create 3 different test cases to handle the same data, right? Steps are exactly same, only the data is changing. Then why do I have to create multiple test cases? I don't have to. Even if you give 10 records or 20 records also, it will work. So one small thing that we can do here is 6th one. So some people still counter here saying like, so boss, like you have given this 3. Here you see counter value is less than or equal to 3. So now we know that we have 3 records here. So we have given 3. Tomorrow if the student number is increasing 7 or 8 or 10 or 15, again I have to come back here and I have to do the modification, right? That's still manual effort. So how do we handle this? I mean, this need to be handled too, right? Is there not a way like where we can ask the tool itself to identify how many rows are there? Yes, there is. That is how we should think. Don't satisfy with your test case. Improvise it so that your manual effort will never be required. Okay, so let me tell you, let me copy this. So on extension to this is read the data, process the data, and write the data into Excel for multiple rows that runs on its own for as many number of entries. I don't have to mention this entries count also. So how do we do that? Very simple. So let me take this backup of this test case and paste it here. So Excel read, process and write into the Excel for multiple rows on its own. Okay, so on its own. So come back here. A small trick is there. There are people follow different tricks. What according to me is the best option is, so I'll take this exactly the inside this loop we have process of Excel range manipulation, right? Observe this. I'll take a copy of this step. I'll copy it and I'll paste it, and I'll put this before while loop. Okay, this is interesting. Observe this. So before this while loop, I'll put this and say not read data. Let me rename this as row count. People use row count or last row count. There are lots of things people do, but according to me, this is one best thing. The reason I'll give you the reasoning also. Okay, so how to identify the total number of rows? According to me, at least I know 3 procedures. The best procedure is go to this particular, we already have counter here, right? So forget about this counter. So come here. It's not about student marks also, so delete the student marks also. Okay, so inside this you have to specify $1, $2, $3, $4, but there is something called last content row, you see. So select this last content row. When you are selecting last content row, the control will go to the last content row. For this Excel range, for this R1, it will go to the last content row, and here you specify in the drop down, here you type it as row number, R capital, N capital. Very important point. This will be your interview question also. How do you identify the last number of how many entries are there in your Excel sheet? How do you identify that? This is one of the best way. So last content row, row number, you specify it as give a buffer name, any buffer name, maybe total rows buffer. So this is how I'll specify. It's not select, it's buffer. So I am asking the tool for the same R1, identify the last content row and get that row number and save that row number here. Okay, so now I will use that row number inside my condition. Inside my condition here, buffer of counter is less than or equal to total rows buffer. Yeah, so copy this and flower bracket buffer of. So if I have 15 rows here, so this loop will be executed for 15 times. If I have 22 rows, 22 times. Very simple. Okay, so let me execute this and show you. This is an interesting part, interesting point. And also let me execute this. I'll close this. So maybe I'll have one more row here just for your understanding. Yes, and Gopal maybe, and here it is. I'll give exactly 50 so that you will also understand border will be passed. Okay, so save it. But there is one small thing that we have to understand here. Our range, we have to be very careful here. I have defined it as D4 here. Let me define it as D100 also here. It can be any number, D50 also. A class cannot be having more than 50 or 100, right? So give a meaningful number here. So now the range can be 100 rows, but content will be only for 4 rows. Okay, so let me execute this. Right click on this and run in Scratchbook. Let it run. It'll take couple more seconds because we have got more rows here. it is pass, you see. So let me first show you this row count. So expand this. What is the buffer name? Total rows buffer has been set to 4. It is identifying that it has 4 rows. You understand that now? Because data table, actually we have 5 rows, one is header row, but the data table we already have set up the header row. Just go and look in my previous video, you'll understand much better about this point. So now it understands it has 4 rows. So now the loop will be running for 5 times. 4 are successful ones and 5th one is not successful one. So go to the first repetition. You see the loop here. The counter value is less than or equal to the buffer, total rows buffer. Total rows buffer is 4, counter value is 1. Very simple. So go back to the Excel sheet and open this Excel sheet to see whether it is working fine or not. All 4 data should be updated. Now you see 72 is passed, 56 is passed, 24 is failed, and 50 it's a border. Border is also passed because less greater than or equal to 50. So 50 is also passed. So now you don't have to worry about. So you see, observe this. Maybe let me run it as 5. Kumari. Okay, so 70, and let me have one more 6666. Okay, Sindhu. Keep it as 99. Okay, let me delete this. Only data is being changed here, nothing else. Only data is being changed. I don't have to change my test case even. Only data is changing. Close it. I don't have to change my test case. Simply go and run this test case. It will work. That is how the good test case, good automation should work. Any change that happens to your data, it should not impact your test case. It should run on its own. See, at the backend point of view, it is opening and it is pass. Okay, so how many repetitions we have got? So you see the row count. Let me show you the row count. Row count is 6 rows of data. And so 7 repetitions will be there, 6 will be positive, and 7th one will be fail. I mean negative. It's loop breaker. There it is. You don't have to change anything from your test case. Such a beautiful concept, very important concept. It does not apply only for Excel sheet. It can be applied for anything. And one more important point. As I told some time back, there are different ways to get this row count. Some people will use this. This is the best way. There is something called row count, as I have used a row number here, right? There's something called row count also. But the row count will be dependent based upon your Excel define Excel range. You are defining a range here, right? If you use row count, it will give you 100 because you are defining the range as 100. So that will be a confusion. And also there's some people will also try it as they'll put one more loop to identify this row count. They'll put one more loop. So run this loop till you find a null value. So when you find a null value, which means the data is complete, there are no more rows. So from there they'll take the previous row number, and that's where they'll define that's the row number. These are all more bigger processes and complex procedures, but this is the easiest out of all these things. Okay, so hope it helps, and try this. This can be applied for anything. Does not mean that it can be applied only for Excel sheet. Even for TCD, even for TDS, everything can be applied. This logic is the framework. Okay, thank you, and hope you like it, and we'll come back with a different scenario in the next video. Thank you, and happy learning.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so that you will never miss our next concept. Also, if you have any questions, please comment in the video or mail us at technologytrainingexperts@gmail.com. See you in the next video.